What's up, Digidestineds? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today let's talk about some more Bandai issues, shall we call it? So let's start out with the Digimon tier list here. This was posted on Twitter, I think. This is where it got circulated from. But right now, if you take a look at what the current top tier decks by, I think it's just Digimon Card Game in general, they kind of notice what's the best decks of the format right now, and you kind of can see where they're going at here. First off, you have the tier 3s, Great Spirits, Cinderella, and then you have Millenniumon. I mean, we haven't seen Millenniumon decks at all. I wouldn't even put it in tier 3. I would put it in tier 5 right now just because the deck isn't able to compete. Then you have like the in-betweens here. This one is definitely a tier 2.5 by the looks of it. It is the Omnimon deck. Kind of interesting to see that's where they're kind of just putting in like 2.5. And then you got the tier 2s coming around here. Or would you even count this tier 2? So yeah, this is tier 2s mixed in here. So it looks like tier 2 kind of cusp of tier 2s is like Lord Nightmon, Dark Nightmon deck, you know, Bellastar X, and then you have, or what would probably be Musketeers, and then you have Lucimon itself, which isn't bad for taking probably tier 2 range. And then you got the main tier 2 hitters. You have, by the looks of it, tier 2, you have regular, what would I call this, would be the Koji Ancient Garurumon deck, Takuya's Ancient Greymon deck, and then you have none other than Fenry what is it? Takamazuchi deck, Imperial Dramon, and then you have Black Blockers, which is a new form of deck that appeared because of the set EX7 with Shoto. Shoto made it so Black Blockers now kind of exist as a deck. It's been floating around for a bit. Players kind of used options to try to make Mother D Reaper block, and then they kind of forced the attack so Mother D Reaper would block the attacks. It's not a bad kind of gateway deck. It has its potentials and moments. It's kind of annoying to deal with at times, and I kind of get where we're coming at here. And if you kind of look at where decks are falling right now, let's get into the tier 1 categories here. You have 7 Great Demon Lords, which no surprise here. We kind of see where this is going at. The deck got really much a power boost when it got Shoto, because now all their guys kind of can block and prevent damage going on. It's just great value that way. Then you have Purple Hybrid Shenanigans, which again, not a bad thing right now with the abilities of the Tamers that have Mind Link being able to at end of turn pull themselves out, and now you can now get free hybrid advantage. It's now a scary tempo, and we can see more and more decks kind of just abusing that. And the same thing happens with Mother D Reaper as well with its green black based. It does the same thing, but purple kind of over here with Duskmon and stuff like that kind of just do its own crazy shenanigans. And then we're getting into what we kind of normally see. First off, they justify that Numemon is one of the top decks. Yep, no surprise here. We have Mirage being one of the top decks. It's been a wrong running deck. Then you have Blue Yellow Magna Mon X, and then you have Yellow Vaccine, which is basically Yellow Armor Magna. There is no other form of Yellow Vaccine really at the moment. Yes, you do have the 3 Great Angels, but the deck isn't doing as much as what we want to see. But we also have the red-blue version of the Ancient Garurumon deck. No surprise here, the deck kind of just does what it wants to do. And then you have Gabubon doing as well. As you notice that we take a look, we got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 decks right now. I would count it as 5 decks that use Ukumon as their kind of rush engine. Gobblebons can play without Ukus, but that's up to you if you want to use it or not. But at the end of the day, we have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 here, depending. I don't remember if this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 total if this one actually plays the Ukus as well. I just don't remember off the top of my head as if it does. But taking a look at this now, we kind of just run into the same kind of small issues that players are going to be whining, complaining. Right now, if they're taking into this data point, realizing decks that have been kind of just around a little bit far too long for the JP meta, especially because we are going to be creeping into a, you know, for them, they're going to be moving on to BT19, while we are going to be slowly creeping into BT, what, 17 for us. And if you can take a look, they want to sell product, and Digimon is all about selling product. They want to sell the new best thing. If you're telling me BT17, and then the most recent EX set, and this is older than that, older than that, older than that, older than that. So with this many older than the most recent EX7 and or is it EX6? EX6 and then 2 BT17s with a splash of BT18 to help in this list. Outside of that, you have really long overstayed their welcome tier 1 decks that, again, we are getting closer and closer to the end of summer. That is usually when we see restriction lists come in play, means we should see some sort of hit that will kind of just knock these guys out of the tier category just because they don't like decks staying too long. I mean, do I think we're going to see a huge purge? Maybe not. I don't know where they're going to go with the investment wise, but if their new decks kind of don't start moving in consistently enough, I mean, we got one new deck kind of teasing into tier 1. You know that decks kind of, their profit margins kind of look bad because right now you can take a look, and if this is telling us tier 1 is where it's at, most players will not invest into something new. They'll just keep what they have and just hold it long term. I mean, there are a lot of decks probably at this point overstayed their welcomes. You know, Mirage still being one of the better decks into the format. You know, you have Numemon being ridiculously fast with its Uku engine and then being able to do mid-range shenanigans. You have Gobblebons being fast because it can skip evolve. You have Mirage. You have Ancient Guru who can skip evolve as well. You have Magna Mon X, which can skip evolve. Then Yellow Vaccine, which can skip evolve. You know, if you can skip evolve enough, yeah, you're at a faster pace than any new deck is going to come in that they want to do. I mean, a lot of decks have to do their normal shenanigans. But with Mirage in general, this deck is way older than any of the other tier decks. Means that Mirage should probably see a hit coming the upcoming restriction, because yeah, if you're going to tell me Mirage can last this long without some sort of hit, there's issues. Now let's get into something I really wanted to talk about though. Boxes of Digimon has been slightly climbing. And what do I mean by this? So the most recent sets are starting to kind of get out of hand. And like right now, we're kind of seeing top ends here. Secret Crisis just sold for $118. Beginning Observer, $130. Inferno Extension, $131. because they are really good sets. Don't get me wrong. They have really powerful secrets. They have meta-defining cards that kind of make the decks just do well in general. We haven't had many sets like that often that majorly have strong secret cards and still present meta decks that are really scary to deal with. You know, the last big one would be, a lot of people would say, is X Record. X Record definitely did some crazy shenanigans, changing up and shaking up the meta. And I know we had Dimensional Phase, but right off the bat, they kind of neutered it. You know, Double Diamond was annoying as well because they did the skip evolution, which made the decks faster. You know, things like this start leading into long-term problems. And right now, if we really want to talk about this, is that Beginning Observer, Infernal Ascension, and even Secret Crisis are going to remain high for a good while. And that's because product was actually a lot more scarce than actually the other products. Since BT7, I would have to say, we have gotten to a point of close to more than abundance amount of product. Stores were able to get so many cases that they don't even bat an eye, which is not bad at all. So keeping that in mind, like, there are some hiccup sets, especially Dimensional Phase, that caused some issues. Then you had, you know, what was it? Acid Apocalypse, because of the hits, kind of hurt the product, which also hurt sales. So keeping that in mind, the only big time we've actually had product shortages was on release up to BT5-ish. BT5, I felt like you got at least a decent amount of product, but it was until closer to BT7. Once we got BT7, that's when we kind of got the floodgates of as much product as you want, go for it. So that's starting to show its ugly face because a lot of stores place orders for X amount of product and they're kind of getting shorthanded. And that is going to lead to a long-term problem for a lot of people. You know, that's something we need a good fix for. Then we also are leading into more promo problems as well. After, what was it, BT9 with, you know, Greymon, Altarius mode, and like that, we have gone to just being one single promo pack instead of being the dual promo packs again. You know, taking that into account, it's actually been hurting the player base more than they like. You know, right now, Raremon's on the down climb, which is good to see because players are realizing you don't need it for your 7 Great Demon Lords. Sistermon kind of does what you need it. But you also have Shadramon and Zubermon. Shadramon should not be in the $25 range, and Zubermon should not be close to 30s. Nor do we have Diaboromon Ace should never be this high at 27s. And Kuwagamon should never be this high at, you know, close to 20. And we're also seeing an issue with our promos. You know, new promos that have great value going into them now, because they do some meta shenanigans. Like, even when we take in the account of Where Garurumon wasn't that expensive on release. It was kind of dirt cheap. You could get them, and that was fine. You kind of got 2 cards. You kind of knew what you're... By the time you opened the pack, you knew you were going to get a Garurumon and a Where Garurumon, leading to being a little bit more pricier on the card department, which isn't bad at the end of the day. It wasn't too broken and busted until we got BT9, and that's when kind of certain cards exploded. You know, like even now, just for a Minomon, $14 a piece. Yes, they're doing something right with having it be a tournament pack card. So at least as entry and winner stamps, it lessens the load on the player base itself trying to hunt these kind of cards. But like I said, Deltamon, Altarius mode, all those cards were part of the BT9 box topper, and it definitely showed when they had the foil and non-foil. Prices definitely weren't this scary as they are. I mean, Altarius mode was more your expensive card, and then the rest were kind of in the cheap range. but Altarius mode was also played at 2 to 3s, and that mattered in some circumstances. And if we keep even going further, you know, promo issues start even back in the beginning of the game. And by that I mean, let's take a look at Diaboro. One of the biggest promo issues was that it was a card you needed at a lot. It took until this card was printed into oblivion that this card reaches 71 cents. And taking that into account, this card used to touch $100. Crazy, right? You know, you also had the Caramon in the 30s. You had the Cursories, more expensive as well, too. Leading into a point where promo cards were just so expensive, especially just to play a deck you wanted to play. Diaboromon needed its promo, and it was freaking expensive. You know, it is not a joke when I said this card touched 100, and just people to get at least 3 copies in their list that they want to pay was paying over $300. I mean, luckily I flipped mine as soon as possible because I was not going to hold long term on that kind of card profit. So I think at the end of the day, we're kind of stepping back to the original promo issues, and we're not fixing the long term health of the game that way. I think, one, we need a restriction list to come in soon. I think long term wise, some sort of restriction balancing to Ukus, to even just old running decks that's been around far too long that should not be, should probably see some snips. But I think if you handle the Ukus and you hit something similar for Magna Mon, just to kind of balance the deck, because again, even right now, some decks are still struggling just to even deal with Mother D Reaper, which showed up. That is scary to think about, because Mother D Reaper is just a 15k, which is what Magna X is. And leading into that, we're going to have to see what happens. So one, box prices are getting out of hand because product is just so low. And I expect it to be like this going forwards until we caught up with JP. And then maybe we'll see some reprieve, but we'll have to see if that will matter. Next, we do have issues with promos. I think they need to go back to the original style. It would definitely help the game in the long term. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.